Johannesburg, there is a new mayor in town, and he is with Al Jamaa, and questions are being asked about whether he will be independent or there are strings that will be pulling his moves. Let's speak now to Ebrahim Fakir from AUWAL Socio-economic Research Institute, taking a look at what this means not only at local government level but for the national elections which we are going into in 2024. Ebrahim, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. So taking a look at all of these conundrums, you think what?
Good afternoon, Dudu. It's impossible to tell. The reality before us is that the parties are entirely self-interested and are entering into these negotiations on the basis not only often of what is in the interest of the party, but sometimes it's so narrow that it's about what's in the interest of particular individuals. And that's the reality we're facing now on the ground empirically. Now, let's understand also that many of these negotiations are happening in one place with a view to what can be extracted in another. So, for example, if I make certain concessions in place A, what can I get in return for that concession in place B or C? So that's the first level, at local level. Then you have the eye on the provincial level. And if I do certain things in certain places, what can I extract to get at provincial level? And then it's what am I going to get nationally? And much of this is about wanting to influence, often irregularly, unfortunately, but influencing public procurement, public spending, contracting, and so on. And there's huge money, particularly when there's major infrastructure spending on the cards, and repair and maintenance projects which are on the go for infrastructure and so on. There's much to be had. And so that's the places at which people are looking at for influence, firstly. And secondly, what they're trying to do is trying to maneuver and subvert the democratic logic. And unfortunately, it's all the parties which are guilty of doing this. So let's take each of their arguments by turn, right? The one says, no, we didn't get a majority, but even though we didn't get a majority, we have the largest numbers and we won most of the wards, most of the constituencies. So we actually geographically represent a set of people in a geographically demarcated area. And there's some merit to that argument. They should be included. On the other side, you have the argument that says, listen, the democratic logic is simple. You didn't get a majority. We called together a minority coalition and we got into government. That's appropriate. Which one must we believe? If either of these sides, advancing this argument, did this on the basis of decision-making, of oversight, of accountability, and of ensuring service delivery, because that's what local government does, through the oversight that they exercise, then there would be some merit to either of those arguments. But they've done nothing. And so there's no merit to either of them. It's clear that this is just in narrow self-interest.
What to do as an electorate, right? You speak of infrastructure development projects that are currently on the go. The 2022 SACE infrastructure report painted a bleak picture of where South Africa sits where infrastructure is concerned. They've got 5 gradings, with A being world-class, E being undesirable. South Africa scored an undesirable D, so we're teetering on that undesirable path. And there's many other things. We can talk about water challenges. Let's not even touch electricity. We know how that impacts us. And so what does the electorate do? Because you've also got people who are dismayed, who may not show up at the polls in 2024. There may not be an outright winner, and we could go into coalition governance as a country. A scary thought, given what we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. One hopes that perhaps when they think that this is about the stability of the society as a whole, when it aggregates at the national level, maybe there's a degree of maturity which enters into some of the politicians' heads. But let's not forget that though you might have certain level-headed, mature, approachable politicians at national level who have the interest of stability, who want to focus the society and the country and institutions of state on the task of stability before we can even think of reconstruction. The reality is that many of the parties are fragmented. They've got fragmented approaches to dealing with these things. So I think that they will even buck the principle that they might adopt as a party at one level because it serves a narrow, local-level politician's interest to do something else. For example, it might well be in the interest of the ANC, particularly in Gauteng, to strike a deal with the EFF. But nationally, it might not make rational sense for them. But because the Gauteng province and the ANC are fragmented as it is, and fractured and fractionalized as it is, might go its own way in certain provinces, contrary to the wishes of the national leadership. Now, I'm not saying this is only peculiar and germane to those two parties. It might well be true for any number of other parties. The truth of the matter here is that our parties are poorly institutionalized. They have poor respect for the kind of national level decisions that they have made. They have scant respect for their own internal procedures and processes and decision making. And you can see this merely in the process leading up to conferences, even of the large, on the surface of it, well organized and well institutionalized parties. They have disputes over procedure, they have disputes over process, hell, they even have disputes over credentials, and sometimes they're active fights. So if you take principal resolutions of who do we work with and on what basis, you might find a different level politician saying, no, we are not this kind of party, we are that kind of party, and therefore because it would serve us to do this, we will go with this in this place, and you can do whatever you want elsewhere. So until there is some level of cohesion and a fidelity to a set of principles, we're looking at a kind of politics which is entirely fragmented. If you ask how a citizen is responding to this, it's quite clear. Already in the 2019 national election and the 2021 local election, the number of people who registered to vote but didn't bother to turn up, who were added to the sum of those who simply didn't bother to register, is already telling you that there is a crisis of credibility, and this crisis of credibility may in fact lurch onto a legitimation crisis.
Ebrahim, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Ebrahim Fakir is a political analyst.